Welcome back to Overtime here on WOTM. Mark, over in Omaha is where we have the College World Series. It's been going on for a while, and now we're down to our final two teams. Now, you and I talked all year long about how the SEC was the best teams in the league. When you talk about the top half of the league, I think 12 out of the 14 ended up making into the regional round, and now we have our final two. However, the final two is Mississippi State and Vanderbilt. Ironically enough, it's two teams that didn't even win their division. But here they are as the final two teams in the national championship. The way Vanderbilt got in it's a little weird, and we'll explain a little bit later. But first off, is it any surprise at all that the best league in the best league in the country has the last two teams here playing for the championship?
Well, with Vandy, you're looking for a team that could win back-to-back championships. People forget, I don't know if anybody forgets, but they didn't play last year. And there was actually a time when the Vandy coach drove by and he saw it padlocked.
Yeah.
And that really made him sad because his team never got a chance to defend their title. Well, they do now, and they're a totally different team than they were a couple years ago. A couple years ago, they had a lot of guys that had 3 years of experience. They entered this year with 31 players that didn't even play in an SEC game yet. So I think that's the thing for Vanderbilt. They're led by Jack Leiter, and they're led by Rocker, two of the best starters in the games. I mean, Leiter, they're only hitting 128 against all year. Both guys have tremendous strikeout to innings pitch numbers. So I think that's the strength for Vandy. Their offense has been inconsistent all year, so that's nothing new. What I really feel for, though, is NC State.
Yeah.
I mean, the fact that they had to miss because of COVID, and again, there's a little conspiracy about, well, they weren't tested, and if you were vaccinated, you don't get tested. So I don't like that. I think it puts a team in a bad spot, makes them forced to do things maybe they don't want to do, and you still have a choice on whether or not you want to get vaccinated. Whether you think it's the right thing or not, that's a totally different issue.
Right.
But you should be able to have a choice without being punished for it. And especially in an environment where you're playing a sport where you guys have worked hard all year. And NC State isn't like these other teams. Vandy's been in there a couple of years. Mississippi State has like second most appearances for a team that hasn't won. They've made it 3 straight years to the College World Series. So I think for those guys, this isn't anything new. But for NC State, that was a rare time for them to shine. An ACC school. I mean, NC State hasn't really won many things outside of, you think of Jimmy V and, like Torrey Holt was a good football player, came out of there. But, not too many other things. So that would kind of that disappointed me that their run kind of got interrupted.
And they didn't lose any games. Of course, they beat Alabama and to start their playoff run, and ended up going to the past Super Regionals, beat the #1 team in the nation in Arkansas, and now they sit here in Omaha. We'll turn our attention to Mississippi State. They beat Texas in a great game, 4-3, a big walk-off hit. Actually, guys that played in high schools in Alabama were the main stars of this baseball team. Tanner Allen, who was picked last year in about 34th round of the Major League Baseball draft, played his ball at UMS Wright. UMS Wright obviously has a great program, having another great year this year as well. Also have a big Rowdy that played his high school baseball over in Auburn. Is this a team in Mississippi State this year, now the fact that they are back for the 3rd straight year, and that they have all this, they have, number one, a bunch of experience, but then two, a bunch of players that have played in these high-stake games, including their last game against Texas, you kind of give them an edge as far as mentally going into this matchup, or do you think it's about even?
No, it's about pitching.
Yeah.
And Vanderbilt has a better pitcher. And it's going to
They got the two best pitchers,
Yeah.
two of the 3 best pitchers in America.
It's going to be hard for them to beat them no matter what. I don't care how much experience you got. If you can't hit the 2 best pitchers, you're not going to win. But what I'm impressed about is the SEC now. This is the 3rd time since 2000 that there's been an all-SEC final.
Right.
You had Florida and South Carolina back in 2011. Then you had LSU and Florida back in 2013. So, 2017. So, among the conferences, like no other conference has done that, where they've had 2 teams in the final. And it just speaks to, I know I'm a little bit of a homer for SEC, but, I mean, they do well. And not just basketball, not just football, baseball, too. I mean, baseball, they have such a standard. Outside when the Pac-12 did early, you had, Southern Cal winning like 5 straight from 70, 74 with Reggie Jackson, guys like that. Well, now you have teams in the SEC kind of taking turns. And if Vandy can win back-to-back here, even though it's not like officially back-to-back,
right,
it still is winning. The only 2 years that they had tournaments, them coming away and winning. That's a huge accomplishment. Last team to do it was South Carolina back in 2010-11.
We'll start our press conference sound with Mississippi State head coach Chris Lemonis and also Tanner Allen talking about being able to get here against Vanderbilt and what they'll have to do in the next 2 of 3 games.
Our message from the first game of the regionals was it's a players' game and players win right now. Coaches don't win. If we make great pitches or we get big hits or we get whatever, you just have to be ready for your time comes. And that's what our guys have been able to do. Coaching's very little right now besides us cheering them on and keeping them invested. But it's about the players. And the players will win. There'll be players that play great and win this thing. And that's what it all comes down to right now. Usually that's what comes down to all year long. Coaches are just, we're here for the ride.
We're just going to control what we can control, and that's preparation. We're going to have a great practice today. Then we're going to go home and get off our feet and lay up and relax.
Last thing on Mississippi State, Mark, this is a team that has not won a national championship. Not just in baseball. They haven't won a national championship in any team sport in the history of their school. Does that add a little bit more pressure on this year's team? The fact that they're here again, they're here for a third time, they got the SEC Player of the Year, they're seemingly knocking on the door, they beat Vanderbilt earlier this year. Does that put any more pressure on this team, this Bulldogs team, to come through with the first national championship in school history?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you think of the players where they had Thunder and Lightning, Rafael Palmeiro, who's, whether you agree with the stories or not, I mean, one of the few guys that have over 500 home runs and over 3,000 hits. Not too many guys have done that. And they have a long history of success in baseball. Only Florida State has won and appeared in more tournaments without winning.
Exactly.
Clemson's appeared in 12 also. This is their 13th, Mississippi State. So, you don't expect them in football really, but in a dominant SEC West by Alabama and Auburn and LSU. Okay, I can understand that, but even though they have those annoying cowbells, drive you crazy. I think that this is their time to do it. If they can do it here, I mean, you saw how it affected Cleveland when LeBron came back and won against a team that won the most games in NBA history. So it can be done. You can beat the two best pitchers, but they got to work to do it. They got to work ahead of them.
No doubt about it. They've made 12 tournaments in Omaha and also a national championship game appearance back in 2013, now trying to win the national championship overall. And head coach Chris Lemons says, hey, look, we understand there's pressure, but they're not using that word as it relates to this series.
I think our kids understand it. It's hard enough to have the burden of our own team instead of the burden of a lot of other teams who've been here. So, man, we're just locking in. Game one, Vanderbilt. We've had to do it. 2018, some of my kids had to go to Vanderbilt to get here. We just had great games with them over the years. We can't, you can't go back and take it. We know our whole university and our whole state's behind us. And, man, we just want to play good and represent our fan base. But the reality is, these poor kids, I mean, Tanner Allen, I don't think, was born when, some of these that we lost or whatever. So they're here. They're making their own mark on history is our goal.
Next time we'll talk about the Vanderbilt side. You mentioned on the front end of this about their pitching. And obviously with both Kumar Rocker and Jack Leiter, they have two of the best pitchers, 2 or 3 or 5 best pitchers probably overall. We'll see in the Major League Baseball draft coming up in a few weeks just how dominant this pitching is. In the past, they've had good pitching as well. What do you think is their most important thing? Take the pitching off the table with both Rocker and Leiter. What's the most important thing over the next 18 to 27 innings that the Commodores will have to do if they want to win another championship in Omaha?
Well, because they have a young lineup that's been extremely inconsistent, there's going to be key times in the game where their younger players are going to have to come through with guys on base and kind of, as Bill Parcells would say, be able to take off their huggies.
Yeah.
And if they can, they'll win. If not, then the pitching will have that much more pressure put on them.
I think we're going to go see 3 games. I'm hoping, honestly, I'm just kind of crossing my fingers that we see 3 games. This thing goes till Wednesday, kind of have a winner-take-all championship celebration. Mark talked earlier about the fact that there's 2 SEC teams in it. Here's Coach Corbin talking about the 2 SEC teams that are in, kind of interesting, saying, yeah, we like it, but.
As far as the SEC is concerned, we're very proud to be in the conference, but we don't. As far as the SEC is concerned, we're very proud to be in the conference, but we don't stand here, beat ourselves on the chest, and say this is the best conference in the country. I mean, that what you do is what you do. We're very proud to be part of something that is celebrated for the kids and on a network, and by how we play the game of baseball. But at the same time, it's joyous for both communities to be here together. We certainly respect Mississippi State a great deal. I I enjoy their fan base. We have many friends from Mississippi State, and we'll stay that way. But we're just proud. We're proud to represent our bracket number one. And I think if moving forward from the great teams that were here in our bracket and then to play here at the end, and so happens to be lined up against a very good opponent, we're grateful and fortunate.
Thought that was interesting. In fact, that hey, we are a part of the SEC. We like being in this league, but we don't beat our chest up and say, hey, we're in the SEC. SEC is the best. You see that a lot in football. You see that a lot in basketball as well. In a lot of cases, they say they really don't do it at Vanderbilt in baseball, even though that's the sport that they are the best at. It's kind of an interesting thing. You see on your screen there the upcoming games in this series. Game 1 tonight, Game 2 on Tuesday, Game 3 coming up on Wednesday. Vanderbilt, as Mark talked about earlier, 2 national championships in the books, 14 and 19. The last time they played in Omaha after the pandemic shut things down last year. Mississippi State seeking their first championship ever in Omaha. The number 4 seed versus the number 7 seed.
Vanderbilt would be the 7th team to win back-to-back championships. The last to do it, South Carolina in 2011, 2010, 2011. The very first to do it, Texas, back in 49-50.
So the history's on their side as far as the last team to do it came out of this league as well. I think we're going to see a 3-series game. We'll see how it all shakes out, starting with Game 1 tonight in Omaha. Well, coming up next here on Overtime, we'll stay with the playoff theme. We'll go to the NBA playoffs after a very, very interesting situation going down over next door in the Peach State in Atlanta. Do the Hawks have enough to take when it comes back? And also the Western Conference also shaking up as well, as a dominating Phoenix Suns performance has them 1 game away from the NBA Finals. We'll talk about it coming up next.